probably because it's February and we're getting into IEP season and people are having preliminary meetings before IEPs and with their providers for all different kinds of services. And what I'm hearing from a lot of parents is that the same sort of sentiment where they're saying things like, excuse me, what changed? Like, I feel like everybody, all of a sudden something changed and what's going on, and like the rules are different, and I don't, and nobody gave me the rule book. And often what it is that their child is in a transition phase, and there are some very specific times when the rules do change. So we're going to talk through some of the things that you need to be considering at different transition points throughout. And I think it's going to be helpful because sometimes you'll be past a phase, but you'll realize, oh, we missed something from that phase, and we want to go back and pick it up. Sometimes you'll be looking at what the next two phases down the road are, and you'll start to think, oh, I need to plant some seeds for that, right? But most importantly, understanding the phase that you're at right now and being mentally and emotionally prepared for things to change. Change is so hard, but we want to make the most of and capitalize on what the things are that we need to be focusing and that we have an opportunity to focus on during this transition phase. So that's what's coming up. But first, I want to say we are live right now. You know, I love it when you guys write in. We do have the chat that's open. We are live right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and about a dozen other places that our fabulous Chris Desmond is going to show you. I'm bringing up the chat right now so that I can see when you guys write in. We can show you, he's going to show you different ways that you can be watching and listening to the show. For those of you who like to watch, and we appreciate you, we've been doing the show now for over 14 years, and there's a library on YouTube of 14. You can go back and look at when my son was little and videos that we did with my son when he was little. You can see when I had dark hair. I was dyeing it, let's be honest. It was never dark. Well, not since I was, like 22. So, but you can go back and look at all the guests and all the topics and all the questions that we answered on our robust YouTube channel. And you can watch our live shows on YouTube as well and comment and all of those things. But then we know that most of you are catching us in podcasts, that's your preferred way of getting information chunked in this way. We are available on all the podcast platforms where you can get a podcast for free. It's important for us. We have been devoted to making sure that you can get this content for free for 14 years. Let me tell you, that's been no small task because it isn't free, obviously. And so when you download a podcast, the free podcast, you will see that there are advertisements at different points. And I hope that you embrace that wholeheartedly and that every time you hear an advertisement, you think, woohoo, they're paying for me to get this podcast. If that is not the sentiment that you're feeling and it's more frustration, do know that we did set up for those of you that are in that camp that you can pay a low monthly subscription to be able to get the podcast with no ads. It's $5 a month. You go to glow.fm, glow like glowworm, right? glow.fm/autism live. Now, don't be mistaken. You're not just getting Autism Live when you pay that $5. You're getting everything that we do at Autism Network. I don't know why we didn't make it Autism Network, but we didn't. So, excuse me. Oh, there we hear what Shannon's still dealing with. But I hope that you will find the way that is best for you to consume information. We do want to tell you that it's, in order to keep on the air, it's always a struggle, always a struggle. And ways that you can help us are by liking, commenting, sharing, and reviewing on whatever platform you get the podcast. If you write us a review and say, here's what I'm finding out, honestly, whether it's negative or positive, and we'll take all kinds of comments, it helps other people to find us and helps other people to be able to go, oh, we don't have a big advertisement budget. We don't have an advertisement budget. Let's be honest. So everything that we've been able to do here in the last 14 years, we've been able to do grassroots. I still think that total over 14 years, what we have spent on advertising is less than $250. And we don't have the budget to do that. If we had money to do that, when we've had money, we've hired people on the spectrum to make segments for us. So And I'd rather that be our priority. But if you will share, like, if you subscribe, all of that helps us to stay on the air. So we do appreciate you so much. We have a lot coming up in the next couple of months because we're going to be moving our studio again. We'll be moving into our, I think, fourth studio now. And that's always an undertaking, and it's horrible timing because it's part of it's going to fall during April. But have no fear, we have huge things planned for you in April that we're very, very excited about. Some amazing guests, and it's shaping up every single day. We are not doing a podcast-a-thon this year because that will put me in an early grave, and I'm busy getting over something, not doing that. So we're not doing a podcast-a-thon, and I hope you'll forgive me for that. It's not happening. Don't ask me. It's not happening. Okay, so hopefully, I do want to say, last but not least, before we jump into this talk on transitions, that everything we do here, as I mentioned, is for information and inspiration for that larger autism community. That community starts with individuals who are on the spectrum. And we always try to make room, and we've had some amazing guests in the last few weeks, and we're having amazing guests on Wednesday. Individuals who are themselves identify as being neurodivergent, neurodiverse, on the spectrum, autistic, whatever words that they choose to use, right? It's critical for us to make a platform in which those voices can be heard, and we try very hard to do that with this show and with all the shows that we do here. But we also include in that community everyone who loves those individuals. We feel that together, this is where we, together it's si se puede, right? That we are a strong community. Those of you that are identify as being on the spectrum, and those of us who identify as loving you, that together we are a coalition that can do a lot of things. But we all need support. And I never want to imply that support for the actual individual is less important than support for parents. But let's be honest, my role here is that I'm a parent and I'm an individual who loves individuals on the spectrum. So the particular slice of advice that I have is for parents. I have no advice to give to a person on the spectrum. I have only love, right? Which is why we have so many other experts and individuals themselves who are on the spectrum come on to share that portion. And we try to really balance it as best we can. That's, we don't always get it right. I don't always get it right, but I want you to know that's what we're shooting for. That's what the goal is. That's what the heart of what we're doing here is. So, having said that, I do want to launch into this parent-to-parent talk today about tips for transitions at all ages. And we are going to go through all the different ages. But first, I have a disclaimer for you that all children, teens, and adults are individuals. They absolutely require and deserve individualized, not planning. My vision is not so good this week. The information in this presentation is meant to be supportive, but not exhaustive. There's no way I could put every single thing that you might want to consider for every single individual on a little slide in a PowerPoint. It just couldn't happen, right? But hopefully, my goal here is to put some things in, as I said earlier, that things to consider. And I do think it's worthwhile to watch not just the age that your child is at, but the whole thing, to look back on ages where, that you've gone through and say, hey, is there any little thread from there that I can pick up? But we talk a lot about with Dr. Granpeesheh, one of the things I respect and admire about her is that in the time that I've known her, I've seen that it's like she can see around corners, and that she sees things coming. She logically looks and says, okay, well, if we get funding for insurance, what is that going to mean? And she logics that out so that she can be ready. And that's one of the things that I've tried to follow as a parent, that when my son was in second grade, I started looking for high schools because it wasn't a panic then, right? But it was going to become a panic if I didn't find one. But leisurely, I could look when he was in second grade. So we want you to look around the corner a little bit and see what's coming so that you can emotionally prepare yourself. Listen, when you get to adulthood and all the things that are facing our parents and their adult children, I don't know a single parent who ever, the first day that somebody said, maybe you want to consider that they're not going to live with you your whole life, that went, oh, yeah, okay. No, I never thought of that before, but okay. That is not a decision that comes in a 30-second capsule. That's like a many year thing of in the beginning going, no, that can never happen. I don't see that. And then starting to see, well, now wait a minute, what if it were something that made them happy? Okay, now I'm going to go look for that. It's phasal, right? So I do want to plant some seeds with you today, some things to think about down the road and to mentally be prepared so that it doesn't catch you up. So many of the conversations that I've had recently, parents are like, what? You mean this was coming and nobody told me and I didn't realize, and I'm not prepared for that? Financially, I'm not prepared emotionally, I'm not prepared mentally for that. We don't want that. So just know that this is not a one size fits all. Our disclaimer here is that this is meant to be supportive. And it does mean, the other thing I want you to know is that resources change. So we're making this in 2025 and, in early 2025. And things are going to change. We know things always change, right? And so I want you to still be somebody who's searching and asking questions regardlessly. Don't just follow this blindly because it's just meant to be some stepping stones, okay? So having said that, let's go ahead and launch in and talk about the baby years. Because I don't think that we talk about this enough. So we're talking about, you have your baby, and I want you to appreciate that time, especially in that first year, and not be too panicked about anything in that time. I want you to focus on connecting with your baby. But at a year old, there is a very distinct transition. And at a year old, your pediatrician is going to start to look at, is your baby making their milestones? And it's crazy making. Can we just be honest about it? When you get on the thing about, oh, they're not making their milestones, it's a very heavy heart kind of moment, right? But it is critical during this phase from 1 to 3 that we don't take a wait and see attitude. And it depends on your pediatrician. You might have somebody who's like, well, your child is, not making eye contact with you. Let's wait and see. Oh, your child is, not redirecting. If you point to something, your child is not looking in that direction. We'll just wait and see, right? Oh, your child is not babbling. We'll just wait and see, right? I just really want to encourage, no. This is the time in which everything is possible. I want you to know that there have been studies and there have been incidences, especially where they took kiddos that were siblings to individuals on the spectrum. And we know that statistically, if you have one child on the spectrum, it's not guaranteed that you'll have another child on the spectrum, but the statistics are higher, right? So these children are at risk from when they're born, and there are studies that have really watched these children, and if they weren't making their milestones, that they started doing some different things with them. And do you know what happened? A lot of those children never developed to the point where they needed a diagnosis. Not ever. Because they intervened early before the child got too far behind. So this is why these years are critical, and we don't take a wait and see. We're going to think of, what does my child need? That's what I'm going to give them. And don't worry about anything else. I think that there are some children that are being diagnosed as early as 18 months, but I don't want you to stress about that. What I want you to be thinking during these years is, okay, so my child, is 12 months old and the milestones say X. They're doing these 3, but they're not doing this one. So let's have some fun and work on that one. And if I need support to do that, if your child, let's say that your child is not crawling at 12 months, then I would talk to your pediatrician and say, hey, can we work with a physical therapist? Or, what do you recommend to help my child to start to crawl? Crawling is a very important milestone. And we know this now, that if your child doesn't crawl, that they go right from rolling to cruising and walking and they miss the crawl phase, that there are connections that between their eyes and their brain that they won't make. So we want them to crawl. Let's not wait and see, and let's not skip over. That's just one milestone that your child might not be doing. Maybe your child isn't babbling. Maybe your child isn't imitating. Maybe your child isn't looking and orienting at you. There are all kinds of things and people who can help you with these things. Just don't wait. You can, and I want to encourage you to keep your anxiety at bay. It doesn't mean anything definitive, but if we just think of it logically, that if your child could hold up a sign and say, hey, I need a half an hour a week with a speech therapist and everything will be okay, would we not do that? Sometimes what happens is we descend into the emotion about, what does this mean? Is this going to be their whole life? Are they not going to speak? And we get paralyzed. This is not the time to be paralyzed. This is the time to say, what does my child need? Let's do it, and let's make it fun. Please do not make it something that is not fun for your child. I do recommend, right now, we have the support for 211. There is a website in your area for 211, and there is also a phone number, 211. So if you call 211, they're almost all run by the United Way. What an amazing, amazing service. And especially if your child is under the age of 4, if you call and say, hey, I don't know who to talk to about this, but my toddler is, not making some of their milestones and I need some help. 211, what happens is these are very highly trained people, and they will start to find you resources. In a lot of cases, they're free. They will do legwork for you to help you to know who to go to. Listen, when my son was 1, I didn't know about 211. I don't know that it existed then, I'll be honest with you. But I remember saying, I don't know who, like, what do I do? I feel like, and I went to my pediatrician and I said, I feel like something is a little, no, 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 it's just you, just you. You can consider getting testing at this point. Testing is something that is available to you all the time. It's just, I want you to consider that at this point, especially if you're closer to the 1 to the 3, it's hard to get an accurate diagnosis. Now, if you already have a child in the family that is on the spectrum, yeah, I would encourage you to just go get tested and see if you can get a diagnosis, because it's going to make it easier to get services, and that's all it is. Don't think of it as a label. Just see it as a way to get funding for services. If you don't already have a child on the spectrum, I would temper it a little bit. By 2, if you're not seeing improvement and you're getting the support, I would definitely push to get a diagnosis. Because if you're going to get a diagnosis by 3, you really want to be able to start hardcore services at 3. And it's not unusual now at 2 and 2.5 to get a diagnosis. My son got his diagnosis at 2.5. And he was able to start, because there's waiting lists, right? Still now. He was able to start his services by the time he was 3. And I know a lot of people who were in the same boat and took a wait and see, and then their children didn't start getting services until 4 and 5, and they felt bad about that later on. If that's your circumstance, let that go, right? But if you are in this space, I think if you talk to these parents, they would say to you, get it earlier. Okay. So those are the baby toddler years. I want you to focus on having fun with your baby and helping them to grow skills. It says on the slide, don't worry about the labels. Just get the help. Just get the help, but make sure that it's fun. Don't miss out on celebrating the years when your child is a baby with worry. Oh my gosh, that's so much easier said than done. But it's true. I had friends who kept telling me that, and I didn't know the end of the story, and I just really wasn't very successful at that. And I think it's one of the things that I mourn, that I didn't get the carefree as much of. I won't say that I didn't get any, but, I always love that House on Pooh Corner song where about, count all the bees in the hive, and this sort of carefree childhood moment that was my expectation. But I was fraught with worry. I got to tell you, the worry didn't help. Action helps, right? Taking action. So instead of worrying, anytime you feel yourself worrying, say, let me go do something fun with my baby, something fun and interactive, See if you can do that. Let me know. I couldn't manage it, but maybe you can. I hope that you can. Okay. Let's go on because there's a big transition that happens at 3. At 3, I'm going to say this and people are going to write in and they're going to say things, and that's okay. Because I think it's important that you get good quality intensive ABA. I think that that's the critical job that at 3, if you have that opportunity, I'm just going to tell you unapologetically, grab that with both hands. Now, is it important that you get good quality? Yes. Is it equally important that you get intensive? Oh my goodness, yes. And anybody who tries to tell you that 10 hours a week is intensive is lying to you. Ask them to see their research. They don't have it. Okay? I'm going to come back to this, but I'm going to go through all of them really quickly on this slide. If you haven't already, get the diagnosis. It's critical because you're going to need it for the funding. You can't afford this. Nobody can. Oprah can't afford this. So you're going to get the diagnosis at this point. You need to understand that legally the school has to offer you a program, an IEP. That's right now. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but on this day, on February 10th, 2025, they legally are obligated to offer you a program for your child. It does not mean that you have to do it. This is a period of time in which you get to decide, and we're going to talk about that. It's also critical at this point that you check your child's full health. Let's find out, are they having an allergic reaction to anything? Are they reactive to anything? Is there anything going on in their gut? Is there any neurological issue that's going on? You may want to do the genetic testing at this point. But I also want to encourage you, what happens a lot of the times is people start to get services at this period of time. They let go of the physicality of this age. And that I want to encourage you, don't do. Anytime you have 10 minutes with your child, get your child running, climbing, jumping, swimming. Get your child as physically active as you possibly can while doing services during this period of time. Because that's going to help them in every stage that's coming along. We know that it's best for self-regulation. We know that it's best to light up those neurons. Anytime you can get them to do cross the body kinds of things, which swimming involves some cross the body, it's just critical. Get them as physical as possible. Your life will be easier if your child is physically active. They will sleep better. You will sleep better. They will be more self-regulated. So, and make it fun. Don't have them out on a track crying because Shannon said so. No, 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 no. Have fun with your child and get them physical. Okay, so let's go back and talk about this a little bit. So at 3, you're really driving the bus as a parent, which is great, except nobody gives you the manual on this. I don't think I understood that I was driving the bus on this and that the decisions were mine and what the legal ramifications of everything are. But school legally has to offer you a program. If your child is 3 and has a diagnosis and you register that with the school, they have to come to you and say, here's the program that we have for your child. Now, I'm a former teacher. I love school. I'm all about school. But here's the thing. And if you have nothing else, sure. But I want you to be aware that the programs that they have at the school, and you can ask them for your science and say, how great is your program at creating progress for this child? They don't have studies that show that. They can show that the children are learning, of course, but making progress beyond where they are. If your child has a diagnosis of autism at the age of 3, they're already behind. The question is how behind. They might be a little behind, or they might be a lot behind on communication and social skills. Those are the 2 things that will get them the autism diagnosis. So you want them to be in a program that has their trajectory going up on those 2 skills. That is not school. I'm sorry. I've looked at the research. I've been in the classrooms. I'm a former teacher. They are not effective. And maybe there's the rare kiddo that can make progress, but it's the rare kiddo because here's why. School is the gauntlet for being able to use your skills to advocate for yourself with language and with social skills. And kids are not as accepting as we wish that they were. And what we find is that a lot of times the progress that could be happening is stymied by the fact that they literally have a disability with language and communication. So at this moment in time, between 3 and 5, you have a choice. You can, you can do a hybrid where they're going to ABA and they're going to school. You can do that. It's up to you. It's entirely your decision. You can have them just go to ABA, or you can have them just go to school, or you could do nothing. But I like to look at the research, and I like to look at case studies and go, okay, for the people who have made this work in the past, what'd they do? I can tell you what I did. After I looked at the research, I school offered us a program at 3, and I said, no, thank you. We'll take the speech and OT, but the rest of the time, he's going to do early intensive behavioral intervention, ABA, with a really good company. It was CARD. That's what we did. Now, let me just tell you, in that first year, the school was not happy about that. In fact, they filed due process against us. Just keeping it real here. They filed due process against us to compel us to bring him to school, which there aren't enough swear words in the dictionary to cover how I felt about that, right? And I cried a lot. I was like, what is happening here? I thought it's my choice. And it is ultimately your choice. But school was trying to compel me to refuse their services officially so that they wouldn't be responsible in the future. It was a mess. It was a hot, hot mess. But I'd read the studies. And they also knew that I was a loudmouth and that I was going to pop off on the studies and say to more people, and look what happened. Look where I am now. Didn't have a show back then, do now. Because I do pop off about this. And that's what we did. We started with a 30-hour-a-week program. I know for some of you, you're like, when did he get to be a child? He, excuse me, he played all the time. Everything they did with him was fun, and he played, and he had such a good time. If you know me at all, you know that I would never allow it any other way, right? And he learned so much in that year. In the first year that of his IEP, when he was 3, they offered him a program that was in the most restrictive environment. I toured that environment. I lasted maybe 4 minutes before I almost became hysterical. There were kids in the room with helmets on their heads. They had one kid who was hitting his head on the wall, and they were letting him. And my kid was a headbanger. It was just horrible, you guys. And the school did not want me to tell you the things that I saw, which is part of the reason why they did due process. What I remember, they were telling me they were doing ABA. They were like, don't worry, we do ABA here. There was a woman sitting at a table with 2 little kids, and they both had worksheets. One of them had earphones on, that's fine, but she had a bunch of pretzels, which are just wheat city, right? And she would point to something on a worksheet. These were 3-year-olds. She would point to something on a worksheet to the little girl, and then if the girl did whatever she was supposed to do, she would take her fingers, which were not gloved, imagine this, and she would slide 2 little pretzels to the girl because she got the answer right. Then she would turn, and the 2 kids sitting on either side, then she would turn and point to something for the little boy, and if he got it right, she would slide 2 pretzels to him, but if he didn't get it right, she would wag her finger at him, and he'd have to try again. And this is what they were calling ABA. My friends, that's not ABA. That is not ABA on anybody's planet, everywhere, anywhere. That is, the kind of crap that gives ABA a bad name. And I completely lost it in this room. And I lost track of myself. My husband was dragging me out because I had raised my voice, which, was inappropriate. There were little kids there. And, but I knew, and I think of it as a blessing now, because I knew that my child couldn't sit in a chair. And he would have been the kid over hitting his head against the wall, because he would have been like, and we were already gluten-free, and the bare hand with, no, just say no. And so we did not do that. And instead, we did an intensive ABA program at home. We did bring him to school, half an hour a week for speech and a half an hour for OT. It was a pain in the pooter to drive across town to do that, but we did it. And at the end of the year, they wanted to reevaluate him. And I said, please, sure, let's do that. My one condition is it has to be someone who has not seen him and has not seen his chart. I don't want any preconceived notions. And they were like, sure, absolutely. So they had this new person who had just started the school who evaluated him, and she came back and said, oh my gosh, we want to offer you a full inclusion in a Fund for Fours program, a nursery, like the least restrictive environment. We want him to go to school with completely neurotypical kids, regular classroom in 1 year. That's what doing intensive ABA had done. Now, that was amazing. But what was more amazing was that Jem was in an early start program, but by the way, he got kicked out of because his behaviors were too intense. But there was a little boy that was in that program that I constantly was wanting my son to be as good as this little boy. And one day I was sitting there waiting to pick him up after speech on the park bench at the school. And I saw that little boy who had been put in that little classroom walking out to the curb with the teacher who had wanted him in that classroom, engaging in behavior and just having such a hard time and being, just an unhappy child. I can't know that he was miserable, but it seemed that way to me. And he had spent a year in that program and not made the progress that my son had made. So this is why I say to you, and I'm not the only person who's had this experience. This is why I say to you, if it were me, I would prioritize the ABA program. You're going to do you, and you should do you, but if you're going to do the school, you need to be on them like white on rice to make sure that you're getting to progress, not just stagnation, right? It was very easy for me because when they gave me the IEP goals for my son, they handed us and there were like 30 goals. And I said, the goals were things like he would be able to sort red from blue. I said, he can already do that. That's something he can do. And they were like, yeah, but he can't do it in a room full of kids. And I said, you're going to waste an entire year for him to be able to do the same skill just with other people in the room? Show me the science on that. There is no science. So I go off a little bit, but that's why this is critical to me. It's also critical that we give our kiddos that physical outlet, right? And if you're going to do any kind of intensive program, you're going to need funding. And that's why I say get the diagnosis. But I also think that it's critical that you check the health. And, now it's infinitely more affordable. I won't say that it's cheap, but it's infinitely more affordable to do the genetic testing, to know, is there more going on here than meets the eye? Part of the reason why you want that is for your gut. Because if your child, for instance, has Fragile X, there's a different path. If your child has a chromosomal difference, it's a different path. It will help you down the road. Don't be afraid. Most of the time, you're going to do the microarray and it's going to come back and say, no. But if it comes back and says that there is something that's noticeable, and by the way, they improve this all the time. All the time, they're able, they're finding more chromosomal differences and they're starting to be able to chart it. And we are getting to the point where very soon, we're already starting to do this, where we can say, okay, we know with this type of autism, that here's the path that's been shown to be more effective. Why waste time? Let's be as knowledgeable as we possibly can. Now, for this period of time between 3 to 5, it is golden time. Your child's brain is so flexible. They really are, if we teach them in a way that's effective for them, which is different for every kiddo, they're going to learn the most during this period of time. And it's when you're going to get the most funding. That's just a reality. So it is really golden time. And I really think that using every waking hour to be a fun, educationally enriched environment for your child is really your job during this time. This time goes by in a blip. And a lot of times I hear from parents, my gosh, it feels like, I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. I'm just like endlessly, yes, that's right. That's what this time is. Make sure you're having fun in it and with it. The thing that we did was that at the end of the day, when therapies were done and work was done, we would put on one song. We had the little tape deck that was there. We didn't even have a CD player. And we would put on one song on the tape deck, and we would just dance it out. My husband, my son, and I would just dance it out as a way of like saying this portion of the day is over, and now we're going to move into the portion where we're, doing dinner and bath time and, bedtime. Find time, even if it's 2 minutes at a time, and don't forget the physical. Oh my goodness, if you have access to a swimming pool, that's such good exercise for your kiddos. They need that outlet, and it literally connects to their brain, especially if you can do cross body. Crossing the midline is what they call it. Look on Pinterest, find lots of activities. You can play games. There's a lovely video right now, a viral video of a grandma who has her little granddaughter, and she plays all these games with her granddaughter, physically jumping. And, if nothing else, have your kiddo just move the furniture. Move the furniture away from the walls into the center, jump on the furniture, and then move it back. That's good, heavy work. Your child will sleep better. Don't miss that portion of it. I see so many kids that the parents double down on the therapy, but there's no physicality, and then we get into anxiety and all those other things. So my advice, don't do that. Okay, I got to move faster on these. Let's move on to the next one, because this is a big transition from 6 to 8. Now all of a sudden, legally, your child has to be registered and has to be attending school. This is a ginormous transition, and you never have the amount of time you had when you were 3 to 5 again. It's just a reality. Plus which, your funding is going to start to dwindle. It may not go completely away, but you're going to see there's a drop off for your funding. So, school services, it's time to lean into them. It's time to, really make sure that your IEP is tight, that your child has the services that they need, that they have enough speech, that they have enough OT, that they have a behavior intervention plan. This is when you want to be as involved as possible, making sure that your child's IEP actually, because if they're going to be there that many hours, you want it to be for the best, right? You're going to maximize social skills at this point. Hopefully your child is still having some ABA, and you're going to push that ABA provider. You want every single social skill. You're going to put your child into a social skills group. Maybe you put them on the weekend into a drama club. You really want to maximize social skills because they need it right now at school. You don't want to forget about play. Play is important. And if it can be physical, great. But we want play skills because they are going to have leisure time later on in their life, and we got to lay the groundwork right now that play is about reducing anxiety and time for me time, right? If you do not have functional communication by the time you get to 6 to 8, it is absolutely critical that everything else take a back seat to that. If your child is not able to communicate their needs and they're 6 years old and they're going to school, I really hope that you've addressed this in the earlier phase, but if you have not had it by now, your child has to have a device. You have to be pushing the school, put it in the IEP, and we really got to double down on this, because if you don't, you are going to see challenging behavior go through the roof. Because if they cannot communicate, I don't want to do that. I feel uncomfortable. I have a headache. I want a baked potato. If they don't have that kind of autonomy, it's going to get bad, and you need to nip this before you get into hormones. Please. We've had people on who are adults now who did not have functional communication at this age, and they tell us it's a civil rights issue. Fight for your child to get that. But just know everything is going to start to change, and the hours that you spend and how you spend them during this time period, because school's going to be a part of it. Now, I will tell you, if you still have ABA funding, don't drop your ABA program. And your ABA program may say to you, listen, we can do the social skills thing, but you'll have to pull your child out of school, maybe 2 afternoons a week. You need to know that legally you are allowed to do that, and the school can't count that as an absence. For years, it's been allowed that medically necessary appointments, your child can always be excused for, and it doesn't count towards absence. And behavioral health was included in that, just, because everybody said, well, it's considered a medically necessary appointment. And then schools just in the last year have started pushing back, saying, no, it doesn't say that. So it was written into the law. It's written into the law now that says including behavioral health. So don't let the school push you around. They cannot count it as an absence in your child being truant. All right, we got to move on to the next one because here is where I feel like it starts to get dicey. When your child is between the ages of 9 to 12, and I just see people not talking about this. So I want to talk about this heart to heart. Huge change here. Huge change. Um, and you're going to see that you're very likely, not in all cases, but very likely, your ABA provider is going to need to transition you to a focused therapy approach. Before, you probably were comprehensive, where you were working on all things. Because your funding is starting to dry up, or it will start to dry up, your ABA provider is going to say to you in some form, they're going to say, we need to figure out what the priorities are. What are your goals? What are your expectations? What's most important? They should be doing this all along, but you're going to see it gets much tighter at this point. And you got to think to yourself, okay, what's critical? And what's most important to me that we work on? And those are the things that you're going to work on. It's really important during this period of time that you're mentally preparing yourself to start to lose some of your services. You may not, but you got to start to prepare yourself for it and add other things in. It's, and obviously I'm giving this talk, and there are some kids that are very capable and doing all kinds of things by this point, and then there are other kids that still are not, that are deeply impacted. So, but it is critical, no matter where they are functionality, that we start to find places where they feel welcomed, that they feel like they have something to add. So now is the time to be seeking clubs and activities that play to strengths. If your child is nonverbal but they like to paint, then you're going to find a painting class, right? If your child needs to be in constant motion, you're going to find a gymnastics class or something like that. If your child likes to build things, you're going to check out the Lego First Robotics program at your library or your school, right? If your child is brilliant at drawing and doing graphics, you're going to find a graphics club, right? You really, hopefully it's something social with other kids, but you got to find things that play to their strength to remind them that they're awesome, and you're building those skills. And that's really got to happen at that point. Okay, let's move on now to the young teen years, because now this is really critical. Between 13 and 16, you're laying the groundwork for what's going to happen when they graduate from school. And everybody tells me, oh, this is too early. Actually, it's a little bit late. Very likely, the school has already decided for you whether your child is on a track to get a diploma and graduate at 18, or to get a certificate of completion. And they act like those are the only two paths, and that's not actually accurate. But if your child at 13 is not in classes that will lead to a diploma, they're not going to get a diploma. That's just the long and the short of it. What are they going to cram in the last weekend? They're not going to have the coursework. If the diploma is important to you, and this is a very individualized question, and it feels like, how can I possibly know that at 12? But if you think that there's a chance that your child can go for the diploma, and it's important to you because you want them to go to junior college or any of those things, then I feel like you have to give them a chance to try that. You might find at 14 it's like, it's too hard, we're going to let it go. But if at 14 you go, oh, I don't know, we should have done that, it might be too late, really, realistically, because it's so much pressure on a kiddo. So school isn't going to want to talk about it right then, because they've already made their decision. You're going to have to push them. If you want the diploma program, you're going to have to push them. If you're already set on, you're going for certificate of completion, then we know that at 18 your child isn't going to graduate and your child is going to go into some other program, and you can start to look at those programs while it is low, anxiety. Because you're not there yet, you can look and be like, no, I don't like that one, and it's not hysterical because you don't have to find something for next week. But it is critical that you acknowledge this step at this transition. I see so many parents, but I just hate that school doesn't say, by the way, this is a place where we're going to take a step and there's not going to be any coming back from it. makes me mad. So you need to know that from me to you. We need to start discussing the ITP at 13. And school is going to tell you, no, we don't do that until 16. Well, in some states they do it at 14, but in all states they have to implement the ITP by their 16th birthday. And schools just don't want to do that. They don't know what they're doing. The ITP is the individual transition plan. And it plans for three things. It plans for where your child is going to work, and it assumes that everybody can work, and it means that they have to find internships for them. And I know I just said that, and some people are like, yeah, but my child is not going to work. I want to encourage you to think of work in a different way, in an entirely different way. That it doesn't necessarily mean that you punch in a target and you're working the cash register. There's all different kinds of work. And my dear departed friend Joanne Laura, who beat it into my head, everyone deserves the right to work because it means you have a seat at the table. And I have seen some very impacted young people hold a job and the difference that it makes for them. And it may mean that they're just stocking water bottles, but that is huge to them. So that's one. The second one the ITP needs to discuss is where your child will live. And schools try to skinny out of this. They go, well, of course they're going to live with you, right? Don't let them get away with that. I want you to think about, like, maybe like, if all things were equal, what would be the ideal circumstance? Listen, there's all kinds of things out there. I think of, if you're familiar with the blog, The World According to Matt, and Matt was, I think he's the youngest of a group of kids, and mom just always said, he's going to live with me. But as he watched all of his siblings leave and go, Matt let her know, when do I get to move out? When is I want that. Now, I remember doing an interview with his mom so many years ago, and Alex Plank was with me, and we were talking about Matt and his goals and him wanting to move out. And I remember Alex Plank saying to mom, well, what about, when Matt goes to work? And I remember her saying, oh, Matt's not going to work. You don't understand. Matt's so impacted, he's not going to work. Well, over the last 10 years, I watched this all play out. And mom was systematic about, well, Matt wants to move out. We're going to find the circumstance. It took her 10 years. And she said to him, you need to learn this, 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 and this. And she systematically taught him all of that. So now for like the last 5 years, Matt has been living on his own in an assisted living place that's just down the mountain from her. And he has a cord that if he needs help, and he's been through snowstorms, it's been amazing. He lives independently with support, And that's Matt's job. Matt's job is taking care of Matt, and he takes it very seriously. That is a job. So, the ITP needs to be where you're going to work, where you're going to live, and that should not be, because unless you're planning on being immortal, it should not be with you. You should be asking the school to think about, where does your child live when you're not here anymore? And that's the scariest thing, right? But the third one, which is absolutely critical, is the school is supposed to be helping you help your child to figure out who their support will be when they don't have school services. This is huge. So all of these things, in the year that your child turns 13, I want you to bring it up at the IEP meeting. They're going to say, no, we don't do that yet. But you'll have put it on the agenda, and you'll let them know, give them notice, look up to see in your state whether it starts at 14 or 16. Most of the states at 16. And tell them, I want this implemented by the 16th birthday. I hear over and over and over again that sometimes it never comes up. They don't even bring it up to the parent. And that when parents do bring it up, they say, oh, well, we'll do it the IEP after they turn 16. No, my friends. If they are 15 now and they're going to turn 16 before the next IEP, then they need to have the plan ready for the 16th birthday. It's your right. Now, do you have to fight for it? No. I'm just telling you, it's there. And every time I watch a parent go, oh, my child turned 22 and it's the big drop off, it's the cliff, it makes me want to scream, because it should never be. There should never be a cliff at 22 if we've done the ITP. And you don't have to do it. You just have to ask the school to do it. Can we go back to the list, Chris? because I can't remember what was next. Okay, so we got to feed passions hard and heavy, which is all part of the last one, which is building self-esteem. In the teen years, it is so easy to be ostracized or to be told that you're different, right? It is critical that we think about what does this child love and that we feed that. Your child is obsessed with the Titanic, then you are taking them to the Titanic Museum. You're making a trip to Vegas to see, the Titanic thing. You are watching Titanic movies. Like, I hear people say, oh, but, then we're getting into obsessions. Well, obsession, passion, who are the people that that are adults that are the most successful? Oh, they're pretty obsessed with the thing that they want to do. If it makes them happy, yeah, sure, we can work on being able to transition and do something else. But you're getting ready to leave school in a couple of years, and then they have this big, long life where we want them to be happy. And we want them to know that their opinion and their thoughts and their feelings matter. And a lot of that comes through feeding a passion. And yeah, when you're doing it, like obviously you want it to be as diverse as possible. So if, for instance, they're into the Titanic, then we want to get them books about Titanic. But then, is it possible for them to like build the Titanic? Is it possible for them to draw the Titanic? Are they a filmmaker? Do they want to make a film? Do you want to get them editing software? Do they want to make an animation about Titanic? Don't make it just one thing. Like, try to stretch that passion into other things. And tell them that they're amazing. Tell them that they're amazing in every way that you can, and surround them with people who tell them that they're amazing. You need to put money in that bank now, because there's so much anxiety that comes at this point. Don't lose the other stuff that you've been doing, like the physicality from 13 to 16. Ooh, it matters. If we're having anxiety, one of the best things that we can do is lots and lots and lots of positive exercise. Please, again, don't send your kid out to run around the track and make them cry because you think that's what I said. No. Physical activity that they enjoy. Swimming is a great one. Okay, let's move on to the later teens because it's another transition. So between the ages of 16 and 19, of course, we want that ITP implemented. Legally, it has to be. You can decide whether you care about it or not, but legally it has to be. We really want to be looking from 16 to 19 about internships, jobs, or volunteering. Really critical, and everybody can do this. Everybody can do this. You can take a very impacted adult and you can, go help clean up a dog pen and a dog shelter. But don't take them to do something that they're not going to enjoy. Have them do something that they're going to enjoy. At 16, you really got to get after the conservatorship if that is necessary. There are, I don't know, I'm not legally all that up on things, but I think it's like 14 different levels of conservatorship. So it doesn't have to be full bore, excuse me, but you have to start this process. It takes a while for the courts are backed up. And if you don't have a court date before your child turns 18, there is the potential that your child, on the day that they turn 18, if they are not conserved, the law is not going to care about anything that you say about how impacted they are. The day after their 18th birthday, if they have a medical emergency and an ambulance is called, they're going to take them to the hospital. And guess what? The doctors are not going to be able to talk to you about treatment. They're not going to be able to tell you what's happening. It is the scariest thing. I've watched too many people go through it. Don't do that. On their 16th birthday, you're going to make the plan. And even if you get to the court date and you go, they made so much progress that we're only going to do this, this, or this, or nothing, then okay, it's nothing burger. But you need to have that court date before their 18th birthday, or you are literally, potentially putting them in danger. And at this point, from 16 to 19, there's a big mental shift, and we really have to be shifting to the long game. Oh, I know it breaks my heart. Parents just feel like we're rushing them when this happens, but it's the truth. And those years go by so fast, and we really have to be thinking about long game, about what's going to make them happy, where are they going to be, how are we going to keep them safe, how are we going to give them autonomy, how are we going to give them choices, How are we going to respect their wishes while we're keeping them safe? Huge, huge stuff. Okay, we got to go on to the last one because we're almost out of time. Uh, oh, I guess there's two more. So, young adults, 19 to 22. Now, it's critical that we have the mindset that the transition from school is not to couch. And this is what happens sometimes, whether the person is graduating with a diploma at 18, they're graduating from college, or they were in a certificate program and they were in a day program, and now suddenly that ends. You've got to be thinking about where they're going to transition to. We have to utilize funding for specific programs. In California, we have self-determination, which is the last one. In your state, you might have something different. If we have not already, it is absolutely critical at this point that we address sexuality, because we can put our heads in the sand, but these are human adults. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Sex is a part of life. They do have feelings. And if we don't discuss it and we don't make a plan for them, we run the potential of sending them all kinds of the wrong messages. There are great programs I'm thinking specifically about at the Ed Asner Family Center, but there might be stuff near you they start younger than this. But if you haven't done it by this point, it's absolutely critical. And I also think at this point it's important to address like the romantic side of things, but we have to address the sexuality for you know for mental health. We have to. I absolutely at this point think it's critical that you make an appointment with the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation for your child of any ability. Like the worst case scenario, and I know this is hard, is that you go and they say, we just don't have anything for you. I've never heard of that happening. I've never heard of that happening. I've heard of miracles happening where they help your child to be able to find a place where they are working. Now, with self-determination, one of the things that they have, there's so many different things that they allow you to pick the program that your child, but one of the things that they have is an internship program where your child can go do an internship and get paid from their own account. Because everybody says, well, why would employers want to take on, workers that they're having to train in a very specific way and be extra patient? Well, because it's costing them nothing. And it adds to their workforce. So look into self-determination. My one asterisk here with self-determination is I want to encourage you not to do it by your own. Take an advocate. I've seen people get so much more money when they take an advocate. So don't do it on your own. Okay, then the last one for older adults. So 24 and up, we really have to get specific and ask the questions. What support do they need for life? Because you're not going to live forever. It's terrible, right? I hate to think of it. Who will support them when you're no longer there? And can they live somewhere else? Now is the time. I want to say to you, there was a mom that I met a couple of years ago that she had a son, and he was one of the gentle giants, but he was getting frustrated. And she's a tiny, tiny woman, and physically she just could not do long term what she was going to need, and she was just killing her. Because, like all of us, she was like, I need to know that he's okay, and I need to know that he's safe. And I remember sitting and talking with her and saying, listen, I don't know what the answer is, but I think, wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be a gift to him now, while you're here, that you find the place, that you make it your job right now to find the place, and you make sure he's settled there, and you are watching them like a hawk to make sure that it's the right place, and you're picking him up and going to dinner, and he comes home for the holidays, so that he's making the transition with you, and that he doesn't have that anxiety of he's there and he doesn't have you. Because there's another way this could go, which is that you wait until you die, and then he has to go through this whole thing without you as an advocate. And she got up from the couch we were sitting on, and she was like, oh my God, I hadn't thought of that. I got to go do this right now. It just filled her with so much fear it burst through the paralysis. I have seen this go both ways. And having the child in the circumstance where they're going to be while the parents are alive, or one of the parents alive, is always better. It's always better, my friends. So I want to encourage you, face that, and see if you can make it happen while you're here and you're healthy. Because you can always pull them out and say, that didn't work. Now we're going to try something else. I know keeping them safe is the big thing. Okay, so those are the things that I outlined. I hope this makes a little bit more sense for you, because I do think that sometimes when the people around us are talking to you about, they don't say, oh, by the way, this is a hardcore transition and here's why. Here's why, because your funding is going to change. This service starts, this one ends. I don't know, it's like they think we already know that. So hopefully you'll be able to see around some corners. I didn't even look. Uh, at the comments. Brian, I see that you said we're always thinking about how functional he will be when we are gone. Yes, and that's important. Uh, Hello, Shannon. I'm listening to your words intensely. 7-year-old's focus is to learn and about empires. We truly are always thinking about his future and are fearful. But you know what, Brian? I don't want to tell you that the fear doesn't have a place. But I want to tell you that use the fear as a motivational tool to go in a direction. And then notice whether the direction is working, right? But I also want to say to you, I've seen a whole lot of things work out, a whole lot of stories work out. Things, circumstances since I've been on this journey, which is, 20 years this year, where I looked at things and I was like, I don't see how that's going to work out. They all worked out. They all worked out. So he's going to be himself, and I don't know whether he's going to be a curator at a museum where he is the person who's running the Empires program, or whether he's going to be a documentary filmmaker, or whether he is going to be somebody who sits and writes essays about it or builds dioramas. I don't, and he may end up doing something like this. Obsession with empires might be right now, and in 2 years it might move to airplanes. I don't know. I don't know. But I'm here to tell you it's going to work out. You know why? Because he's a lovely human being and you're an amazing father. It's going to be okay. So just don't let the fear paralyze you. That's all I want to say about that. Hey, Parker. Parker said young teens, you should start teaching dating etiquette and social skills. Yeah, I had it a little bit later. But I think you're right. I think it's best that that happens in the teens. I know people on the spectrum in their 30s who don't know dating etiquette because it was not ever taught at that young age. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Joanne said, in Philadelphia and the surrounding area, we cannot find programs for this age and those who are not as affected by autism. We are currently in this zone. You know what, Joanne? I want to encourage you, reach out to the Ed Asner Family Center. I know that there has been discussion about opening one in Philadelphia. Push them. Tell them to open one there. Hi, Shannon. I regret most of the time we could not get 40 hours intensive therapy. We got good therapy, but maxed at 20 and decreased from there. He's doing great now, but how much better would he have been if we had had 40? Something I think of regularly. And that's a heartbreak. That is an absolute heartbreak. But I also want you to know, Joanne, that you were there and you were doing things with him. Don't discount those hours. You were doing things when you couldn't do 20. And for anybody who's in that boat now, there's more and more stuff that you can be doing at home if you can't get to the 40. Hey, Rosie, I'm saying hello to you. Parker says if your state has a waiver program, get into it ASAP. The younger, the better. Those wait lists are almost 10 years plus, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. 211 will help you to know that if your state has a waiver program. I just appreciate all of you so much for being with me on this journey, and I appreciate the journeys that you're on. I just want to tell you that you are amazing, all of you, whether you're a parent or you're the individual on the spectrum. Look at all the amazing things that you're doing. We always say we hold hands, we get there together, si se puede, right? I also want to give you a programming note. We do not have Dr. Grampy Shea tomorrow, unfortunately, so we're going to be playing a rerun. But on Wednesday, my friends, I'm going to be joined by Nick Yates. And Nick was a regular on our show for a period of time, and then he has not been on the show for many years, but he asked to come on. I love and adore Nick, and I'm always interested to hear what he has to say. He has a very unique perspective on the world and an update on what his life is like now, which I think we will all find so inspirational. So I hope that you'll tune in for that really special hour with Nick Yates. And we got some amazing shows coming up for you guys. So I love and adore all of you. You're doing an amazing job. Focus on one step at a time. It's all going to work out. Okay? I'm sending you hugs. Much love. And we'll be back on Wednesday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.